In the first part of our design visualization workflow for Civil using 3ds Max Design 2011 and the Civil Visualization extension, we'll have a look at how we import the .vsp3d using the feature interpretation style. We'll have a look on how we can drape the image on top of a terrain, create sweep objects such as bridges, create railing objects such as guardrail and railways, and we'll also add a customized object to the object library. We'll start in Autocad Civil3d 2011 and have a look at the project we'll be working with. This project was built using the metric system and is based out of the UK. It is a reasonable sized dataset and it's built of a main road system using the corridor feature, which is the Pemberton Way, an exit roadway leading to a roundabout, couple of bridges section, and a railway system. Before you export, make sure that you have rebuilt all of the corridor components. You'll find the Dynamite VSP exporter under the toolbox, Subscription Extension Manager, and Dynamite VXP exporter. You can either double-click or right-click and choose Execute. Here in the Dynamite VSP exporter window, you get to pick and choose which component you want to export. It is important to only export the component that you will need in order to keep the data really light that you are sending to 3ds Max Design for the visualization process. A lot of the information that is included in the AutoCAD Civil3d data won't be useful once in 3ds Max Design. So in order to keep the visualization drawing really light, you only want to export the components that make sense for the visualization and that you're going to use once you're in the visualization process. Once I have selected all the objects that I want for my export, I just have to click Export and pick a name. Once in 3ds Max Design 2011, there's a couple of things you want to do before you start your import. First, you want to go under the Dynamite VSP menu, Preference, and make sure that under the Resource Kit path, you're pointing to the UK country kit. Then, under the Customize menu, you want to make sure that your unit setup is set to metric, meters, and that your display unit scale is set to meters as well. Then, you want to make sure that your project folder is set to the project folder that I have created for you. So for this particular example, I have copied the Tech Camp 2010 3ds Max D Civil workflow into my desktop, and I am pointing to that folder. So you can see the folder structure here that 3ds Max Design will use for this project. Then we'll open up the Dynamite VSP Civil Explorer and dock it to the left side. In regular circumstance, when you import your .vsp3d, automatically Dynamite VSP will change the global import shift number to bring the dataset closer to the XYZ000 location in 3ds Max Design, because that's where 3ds Max Design worked as its best, when it's close to the center of origin in 3ds Max Design, which is really different than AutoCAD Civil3d that builds the project to this world location. For this particular demo, we'll enter this global import shift manually ourselves, which is something you can always do if you know the global shift of your imports. So for the X, we'll enter the -35, 31, 67. And for the Y, we'll enter -40, 34, 15. We'll also enter 0.5 to the vertical shift. Then we are now ready to import our data by right-clicking onto the import shape and going under Import from Civil3d. We'll then point to the .vsp3d file that we have just exported that is located under the Import folder. In the Dynamite VSP Civil Import panel, we'll pick and choose what we need to import for our visualization. First, we'll import all the surfaces under Surface. Then, under the Alignment, we'll import all the alignments except for the main line. Under the corridor, we'll select all the region of the corridor except for the verge guardrails. Then, under the roundabout circle, we'll import all the EC corridor feature line that has the region 1 attached to them. Going back to the visualization for engineer designplan.dwg, we'll start using some selection set. While going under the land feature line, we'll type in Abute and add it to the selection. This will select all the land feature line that has a butte in the word. We'll also do the same with wall. Then under the corridor feature line, we'll call up the selection set marking, center line, and you see that some selection are being added here. CL, B. You see again some selection is being added. And also barrier. You can see some selection are being added here. It's good to know that at any time you can always come back to this panel and add on some of your selection that you didn't import at first. Because we want certain interpretation style to be applied automatically on our dataset on import, we'll choose the feature interpretation style, Pemberton feature interpretation style, and apply it directly on import. So if I have a look at this feature interpretation style, you'll see that I'm using certain feature line that I am importing, as well as certain style interpretation, either object, road markings, or sweep object modifier. So those are styles that I have previously saved, and I'm automatically applying these styles into the feature that I am importing in my dataset currently. So let's import this by clicking Apply and then OK. Dynamite VSP will import all of the data that we have selected, and on top of it, start applying feature interpretation such as road marking, object, and cameras. Because I'm applying some cameras, it's needing a certain amount of frame in order to cover the full length of the animation of my camera going at a certain speed on the road. So I'm just going to say yes to increase the number of frame needed in my scene. Using feature interpretation style will make you save time by applying generic object onto your model. And there you go, I have my import here. So if I press C, you see that I have a bunch of cameras that have already been applied to my data set. And if I go to one of these cameras, you see that I have objects that are already applied, such as cars, lampposts, road markings. And I have a camera that is moving into this data set. So right away, I'm saving quite a bit of time using the feature interpretation style. So we'll just navigate to all of these cameras that we have. So I also have a camera here that is applied on the railway. I also have a camera that is applied on different road of this data set. So this is the road below the main corridor road, which is Pemberton Way. And this camera is going to the roundabout. And I also have another camera that is going down to the exit way leading to the roundabout as well. So if I go to the perspective view to help me understand this data set, you'll see that I have the exact same thing that I had in Autocad Civil3d. So I have Pemberton Road, which is my main road. I have the railway system, and I have Enfield Road that's leading to the roundabout, and also the exit way here that is leading to the roundabout. So obviously, because this data set was built in the UK, the car traffic is going to the opposite side if you're looking at this data set from the States or anywhere else in the world that is normally using the opposite side of traffic. So you see that the camera is matching the car side of the highway. Alright, so next we want to reapply the image that we use in Autocad Civil3d over our terrain here, and we can do that by selecting the surrounding terrain and going under the Civil Explorer Draping tab and choosing the bitmap. So opening this folder here, I have one that is 2500 pixel across and 10,000 pixel across. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to use the smaller image because it's easier to render. But once I'm ready to do the final rendering, I will use the 10,000 pixel across image, which is a higher quality images. So you'll see that there's a companion file that is a .gjw file, which is a world file. This file has the world coordinates of this JPEG, allowing the draping to reposition this image properly on my terrain. So you'll see here it's asking me if I want to display the bitmap, and I want to do so. And if I go to the top view, you see that my image has been properly draped on top of this terrain. So you see here, you can clearly identify it by the railroad, and you see that the railroad is aligning with the railroad of the images. So the next thing you're going to want to do is probably start adding some bridge structure into those bridge section of your corridor. And to help you do that, we have imported certain feature line that runs across these sections. So I have a selection set here, which is called Bridge BE, which is the line that runs across here. And if I move this line, you'll see that is actually two spline that run on each side of the bridge structure. So with this line selected, I'm going to open my Swept Object Style Editor, and it's going to ask me if I want to use this selected shape as a parent, and of course I want to use it. And it's also letting me know that it's got the spanning spline geometry mode on, which is an option that I want to have on, and I'll explain you shortly why. So with this feature line selected, I can start building my bridge structure manually if I want, and you see that it's building the bridge structure on both sides of the corridor, which is probably what I want. I could also decide to build this bridge structure either on the left side or only on the right side. You could also choose to import a shape, let's say a bridge profile that you have built in Autocad Civil3d, and use it as a sweep object for this particular bridge structure. So once you're happy with this bridge structure, you can start saving your style, which I'm going to call it test because I haven't really built a proper bridge structure, but just to show you the process of things. So in the same matter, I could also open a style, which I have previously saved, that is called Pemberton Viaduct Mainline. So I'm going to open this style that it's going to automatically apply this bridge style into my project. Bridge style has got a capping on, so it's closing the spline at the end. And it also has a closing surface, which is underneath. If I look underneath of this bridge structure, you could see that it's closed in. So it's got a polygon that's closing both of these surfaces. And if you look at the spanning option, you'll see that if I turn the spanning on, it wants to build that bridge structure on both sides of each spline, which is not what I'm looking for. So I really want to have that spanning spline object on in order to the Sweep Object Style Editor to understand that it's only one object and not two separate splines. So since I have this window open, you could also select a bunch of different structure here. So I want to build a bridge structure into the Enfield Road as well, which sits right below Pemberton Way. So I have a selection set for this feature line as well, which is also two feature lines that run across on both sides. And I can pick this parent shape, and automatically it's going to apply the same bridge structure. There's also another bridge structure here that you see in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and select this structure, and I'm going to just zoom in here, and I'm going to add this parent shape again to my selection, and it's going to build a bridge structure automatically. So you can add a bunch of bridge structure into your scene quickly while using the Sweep Object Style Edit. So before I close this window, it's important to understand that these they are all sharing the same bridge structure, and therefore they are linked together. So you see that if I make any adjustments, all the bridge structure are being adjusted at the same time. So this could be a good option. It depends on what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Now you see that if I go underneath and I look at this Enfield bridge structure, it's a little bit thick for the purpose because I need to have a train that goes underneath here. Now there is option for me to change the bridge structure manually after that, but because they are all linked together, you want to make sure that you are getting rid of that link by going to the Dynamite VSP Explorer under the Other tab. Break that link by pressing to the parameter instancing, and then it's going to tell you, hey, it's not going to be linked anymore, and I'm going to say yes. And therefore, when I start changing the element of this bridge, now you can see that it's only changing this particular bridge. Now I do have a style that I have previously saved for this particular bridge, and I'm going to load it, and it's called Pemberton Viaduct Enfield Street, and I'm going to open that, and you'll see that it's a little bit narrow on the bottom here, therefore the train can goes underneath. So you understand that if I change anything in the bridge structure here, I can also resave this element or a new element as well. So this is good to know. Now with the Sweep Object Style, there is a range of objects I can create. So you see that I was able to create bridge structure. I'm also able to create barrier that I have applied in my feature interpretation. And now I'm going to apply a series of retaining walls. So I have created these extra feature lines that I have imported from the Civil3d data that are here. in my terrain. So instead of closing my terrain, normally how I do it with just the grass section that you can see underneath Enfield Road here, I'm going to apply a sweep object style. And this one is an abutment wall. So you'll see here, I'm going to apply this style. And there you go, I have a retaining wall that has been created. So there's multiple ways to apply the swept object modifier, and you see that it's been applied on both sides. So here I have extra feature line, and I'm going to apply this style editor, Pemberton retaining wall, apply to selected objects. And I have another one that is slope here that I have previously saved. So you see here that applying these sweep object style, you can either go into the main window, but you can also go under the resource and apply directly to your selected feature line for a quicker way if you have different style to apply. The object we'll be placing next is a guardrail. So using the rail object style. So this time I have a selection set called verge guard left, which is a feature line that I have imported that runs along the bridge section of my corridor only on the left side and on the right side, but as a separate object. So with this feature line selected, I'm going to right click into my Dynamite VSP Explorer and apply instant geometry rail object. So you can see there's different ways to apply object style. Let's move closer and look at the preset of this guardrail. So you see here, it just apply a basic guardrail to this feature line, and I can adjust the setting of this particular guardrail by playing with the size of the braces, and maybe adjust the fact that the rail is only on one side and selecting which side is showing. I can also adjust the offset on my road and select exactly where this guardrail is located on my corridor compared to that feature line. And once I'm happy with that style, I can save that style. So I'm just going to save it into a test for now. Now I'm going to want to apply this guardrail on the opposite side of the bridge as well. So I'm going to select the verge guard right feature line and do the same process and place an instant geometry rail object. And this time I'm going to load the style that I just saved, which is called test in this particular case. And I'm going to want to mirror it so the orientation corresponds to my project. And you see that it's placed exactly at the same location than the other side. Now using the same rail objects and playing with the preset, I will be able to create a railway track. So I have some feature line here that are the railway tracks. So let's select the left side one, so railroad left. So I have this feature line selected here, and I'm going to go ahead and place an instant geometry rail object. Now by playing with the preset of this rail object and by changing the material, I will be able to create a railway track. Now I have previously saved a style, so Pemberton Railroad Track, and I'm going to load this style so for ease of use. So you see here, it's the same railing object, but I have changed the preset of this railway object and some of the texture, and I now have a railway track. So I'm going to select the other side of the railroad and apply the same style again by going to the resource rail object style and apply the Pemberton Railroad Track style to the selected shape. So now I have both railway track, and you remember that I have a camera, which is camera 2, that is going along the railway track here. Okay, so now that I have a railroad, I'm going to want to add a train to this railroad track. And to do that, I'm going to use the object placement style editor. But since there is no train by default in the object placement style editor, I'm going to add my custom object to the library. To do that, we're going to open the file named 5A train tie down car and have a look at one of this component of the train. So this is one of the train wagon that I have previously modeled, and I'm going to load it as one of the elements of the. So this object is an editable mesh. So something to keep in mind is the orientation of the train. So this train is following the XYZ orientation, and it is located in the center of the world in 3ds Max design. So if I open the move transform type in, you'll see that the XYZ is set to 0, 0, 0. The center axis of the object is going to be the anchor point where you're going to position this object using the object placement library once in Dynamite VS. So just so you know, this object was created using some of the new Autodesk Material Library. So you see here some of the presets. So the Autodesk Material Library have really simple presets, and they're also supported into other Autodesk applications such as Revit, Inventor, and AutoCAD. This library is built of more than 1,800 materials that are physically accurate, and you see some of these here. They come with their texture, and they're basically drag and drop directly on your model to have a great rendering result. So you see that this library is quite complete, and you'll be able to find the material and texture that you need for most of your projects. Once we have this object that is ready, we're going to open the Dynamite VSP Resource Kit Manager. The Dynamite VSP Resource Kit Manager is basically tied in to your object placement style and is listing all of the objects that you can place in your object placement style. So if I go under the vehicles, you'll see that I have a section that is called train, and this is a section that I've had myself. So if I go down here, you'll see that I have all my train car. And the way that I was able to do that is basically by loading a source file and pointing it to the location where I can find the source file. So for this example, I'm going to point it to the scene that I'm working on right now, which is 5A train tied down car, and open it. So you see that it's going to say, do you wish to copy this file to the appropriate folder in your current DVSP resource kit? And yes, you're going to do that. So it's going to be copied and now part of your Dynamite VSP library. You can choose not to do that, but there's a chance that you might delete the file along the way or later on. So yes, you want to copy it to the resource kit, so then you have it forever for all the other projects. I'm going to say no because I have loaded this file already before. And you can also load a preview file, which is a JPEG or any of the other format available, which is an image representative of what you have just loaded. And basically, to create a new group, you can just change the group name and call it whatever you want. So for this example, I called it train, and I load all of these train components that I'm going to be able to use now in my object placement style editor. Okay, so back into my scene, I'm going to call the object placement style editor. And you'll see that if I start placing a new style under the vehicle, I now have the new train group with all my train component in it. So I'm going to start by placing the train engine, and I'm going to pick my parent shape. I'm going to just pick the railroad center line because it's easier to pick than the one that's underneath the railroad for now. So because I've picked the center one, I'm going to want my train to have a simple offset, so it goes on the right railroad. And I'm going to start it at 21 in the chainage, so you see that my train is going to be positioned here so I can see it in my view. So if I go and click apply, you can see that my train is rightly positioned on my railroad track. So obviously I would go and start placing more object and start adding some train cargo, maybe have a same offset and place it a little bit further down the chainage, so it's following each of the wagon or attached to each other and following one after the other. So you see that my second wagon is after the engine, and obviously I would give it 1 km/h so this train is moving. But I have previously saved an object placement style, and I'm going to load it. So it's Pemberton Trains. I'm going to open that. And you see that basically it's built of, the train engine, the tanker, couple of cargo box, couple of pipe car, couple of tanker car, and so on and so on. And if I apply that, you'll see that my train is going to be properly positioned, and it's also moving along the train track. So if I play with the animation cursor, you'll see that my train will be coming on the curve now, and I'm passing my train, and there you go. So you see it's quite of a long train. I've had quite a few wagons in here. You can make that train the length that you want. It really depends on what you are looking for. So this is the way to add custom object to the object library using the Dynamite VSP Resource Kit Manager.